the GTP car that I had my big accident in, which so I have a love-hate with it. But I mean, pure
fun right up until it wasn't.
Pure thrill. I mean, the car was 1,850 pounds. It was over 800 horsepower. It was the first super high downforce prototypes. The Nissans were dominating at the time. The Chevrolet Intrepid.
Yes. Now I know why you have an affinity for wheel spats.
Yeah.
That right?
Well, in my crash, that's the first clue that something's gone wrong is when the left rear comes out of the wheel spat.
When the wheel spat passes you by.
Yes.
That's an awesome looking race car.
It was. I had a T-shirt on earlier today, which is a caricature of this car. The car looks like a caricature, almost by in
it looks
real
like
life.
a little kid drew
Yeah.
it, or a slot car or something.
It's just like a shovel nose. But this car, so the Nissan of the time. Look at the rear wing. Look at all the elements on the rear wing.
There's a lot happening back there.
And the Nissan of the time, and all the European stuff was it had downforce and big tunnels, but they weren't optimized. And Bill Riley, who designed this car for Jim Miller, who's Pratt and Miller,
Riley of Riley and Miller of Miller,
yes. And so Bob Riley had this car in his mind for several years, and no one would build it. They're like, and so finally Jim Miller said, "I'll build that." And so when we first showed up with it, everybody says that won't work. It'll only work at a couple places. Well, it worked almost everywhere. And it changed the game.
Why would they say this wouldn't work in the other places?
Because it looked like it was just a brick, and it kind of was. At the Glen where I got hurt, Bernd Schneider, who was multi-time DTM champ, this was before his DTM days, was driving for Yost in a Porsche. In the European philosophy, he had a single element rear wing, and I remember being behind him in practice, and the ends were flexing down. There was just a single element. He went 212 through the speed traps at Watkins Glen.
What?
Where can you go 200 on the front straight?
On the back straight after the S's. So it was, it was 900 plus horsepower with qualifying boost and no drag. And the thing was just still accelerating. This car.
That's just ball. I mean, there's skill, but it's also just balls.
Well, I went 178 and I was quicker over a lap because I was through the horseshoe, turn 5 before the inner loop. That inner loop was put in partially in response to my accident. And so, but in qualifying, I was pulling almost 4 Gs through the outer loop, turn 5 as they call it, in that car in 91. And that's ultimately what partially led to the failure of the hub, which is what caused. But
crazy.
I went, so that if you go through the outer loop and that light gray line, the NASCAR course comes back. So just on that, so even though he was 212, I was 34 miles an hour slower. I was quicker over a lap than he was.
So you're making up 34 mile an hour difference on the back straight.
Crazy grip.
Through the, I was brushing the brakes with a down change. He was braking hard and going down 2 gears at the end of the straightaway.
That's like an almost 180-degree corner, and you're brushing the brakes?
Brushing the brakes.
Wow.
What was it like to go from, to step into that car? It was such a leap from previous, and had you driven like was this more downforce and grip than an F1 car in a corner? Seems like
at the time,
a lot, right?
Yeah. Because it has the whole body to generate downforce compared to an open wheel car. I'd come the year before. I was in Trans Am.
Yeah,
I won my first Trans Am championship. I did a few GTP races, but it was one of these things where I really studied and so.
Did the Trans Am cars at the time have
no?
I mean, not much a lot of mechanical grip, right?
Yeah.
But not much downforce.
And it was, it was 20. It's quite a bit heavier. 2,500 pound car, something like 2,600 pound car. And so it was one of these things. I was young and brave, and you would just go till the car, you would find the limit of the car. And so it took some talking to get yourself to go through some of these barriers. My teammate was Wayne Taylor, the father of Jordan and Ricky, and so he had the car early in the year. And because he was already established with Jim Miller. I was coming in with Chevrolet, and so he got the car early and didn't really show much speed. I started the year in the older Spice car that was modified, Old Spice, and Scary Spice. And I sat on the pole in that car in the first race, and so Wayne, said, "Oh yeah, it's good," but he was complaining about this, that, and I'm sure maybe there were some issues. But when I got the Intrepid, it was on, and then and it was just a quantum leap forward. The next year, the new Jag and the new Toyota came, and they obsoleted that in a matter
Silk
of about
Jag?
a year. The Silk Cut cars were before. This was there was Silk Cut, there was Castrol, and this was
the
actually
Castrol one, right?
Bud Light. It ran Silk Cut in Europe. The XJR 14 was basically an F1 car, F1 engine, F1 monocoque with a full
with like a body over
body
it. Yeah.
Did you have to change your thinking for that car, or did you just get in? You go, well, my job as a driver, I go as fast around the corners as I can, and you just drive until you feel slip, even though it was twice the speed of previous.
You had to totally change because the limiting factor in any car, they all have them, and so sometimes it's momentum, sometimes it's wheel spin limited, and so that changes your line and your approach, your philosophy. Some people drive the same way no matter what, and so they would have a tougher time adjusting from a heavier car to a lighter car. Some people only drive open wheel cars, and then when they get into a sedan, it takes them a while. So because I was always really analytical and thinking about it, especially early in my career, I could always kind of tease out what it needed pretty quickly.
Wow.
You had to, that car, you want to talk about talking to yourself.
Yeah.
The stuff it would do. At Lime Rock was my first race with the Intrepid. Wayne had it all year.
Smallest track ever.
Yes. I lowered.
What was your lap time at Lime Rock in that car?
This was with the chicane.
Okay.
And I lowered the track record 2.2 seconds.
Yeah, okay, that sounds about right.
Well, usually 2/10 is a big chunk at Lime Rock, but there it was just, I was flat out from the chicane where the uphill was, flat out through West Bend, flat out through the downhill with 800 horsepower, and then going to about the 2 marker before I hit the brakes.
That's scary. So what was the time? Like
I was 44.2. Yeah, with the chicane.
44.2. That's a crazy lap time there. And is that still a track record there?
It would be, except the Toyota the next year broke it. PJ Jones broke it. He ran 43.9 next year.
So all the other teams saw what you were doing and immediately went, okay, that's what we're all doing now. Like more wings covering rear wheel spats.
It
everything.
took a while because at Lime Rock they're like, well, duh, it's going to be that fast at Lime Rock, and on the street course as well. When it was just as fast at Laguna, I was hurt by this time, but it was I think Wayne was first or second quickest at Elkhart Lake of all places, and so the writing was on the wall, and everyone basically. And then I think the Gurney car might have already been in the works, but the Mark III Eagle that Fangio and PJ drove, that basically ran everybody else out because it had a lot more power with the turbo, and it was almost unlimited, not unlimited, but gobs of downforce. So it was. So that was the question. The most fun, the thrill.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just mind-boggling what it would do.
Yeah.
And I'm glad. I mean, the car hurt me badly, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, the thrill of driving that car and on the limit was.
You never got back in another one of those, did you?
I got back in that car when I came back from my accident.
Okay.
I drove that the next year. That was all I had kind of available.
Yeah.
But yeah,
craziness.
Yeah, it was a thrill.